Greetings, heroes! Now that the Olden Era roadmap has been out for a few weeks, we can take a closer look at two things: what the developers are building and what players are afraid they are leaving behind. Classic Heroes features are coming back. Major multiplayer improvements, more neutral creatures, underground terrain, Thieves Guild, map editor improvements, campaign content, and even a mysterious PvE roguelike mode coming at full release. But the community is already asking a different question. Where are water maps, new factions, war machines, caravans, co-op campaign, and maybe most importantly for some players, not enough focus on handcrafted single-player content? So today, let's go through the roadmap stage by stage, talk about what looks exciting and what the community seems to be asking for next. Before we go into the individual stages, I think it's important to point out that this is a preliminary roadmap. So we probably should not treat this as the final list for everything that will be added to Olden Era. It's more like the current plan for early access and a rough look at the road towards version 1.0. Unfrozen is clearly framing early access as an active development period. They specifically mention regular updates with bug fixes, quality of life changes, UI improvements, community feedback, balancing and AI opponent tweaks, and fresh content like neutral creatures, heroes, artifacts, spells, map objects, scenarios, templates, and more. And so far, they do seem to be following through, with 10 patches already released since early access launch. Stage 1 is planned for Q3 2026, and this stage seems focused on improving the core early access experience. The biggest feature here is probably team play mode, and for what I've seen in the community, this is definitely something players have been asking for. This is a co-op mode where you can play together as a team, either against AI opponents or against another team of players. And I can absolutely see why this is highly requested. Team play could make multiplayer more social and more forgiving, because if one player has a rough start, the whole match doesn't necessarily fall apart immediately. Then we have advanced features for the random map generator. Right now, the template list shows fixed setups. Each template already comes with its own map size, player count, and victory condition. So if you want a different kind of random map, you are mostly choosing between existing templates rather than fully shaping the map yourself. With the planned update, players will be able to change map size, player count, and other important settings themselves. That should give players much more control, and that matters for long-term replayability. Random maps are one of the main reasons people keep playing Heroes games for years. We are also getting a hero skills rebalance based on community feedback. And that makes sense because hero skills are one of those systems that shape almost every match. They affect how heroes develop, what strategies become effective, and whether players are choosing between real options instead of always being pushed towards the same strongest builds. And finally, for stage 1, there's an emote wheel update. Right now, it's basically a quick reaction tool with a limited set of icons. The update should make it more comfortable to use and add more responses, which fits with a bigger focus on team play and multiplayer. So overall, stage 1 feels like a practical foundation update for early access, with changes that should make the game smoother, more flexible, and easier to play with others. Stage 2 is planned for Q4 2026. The first item is the Elite Class System rework, also known as the subclass system. Right now, elite classes are tied to specific skill combinations. If you level the required skills to expert level, you unlock a powerful class bonus. For example, a major attack bonus or defense bonus. So this system can have a big impact on how you build your hero, and it can push you towards certain skills and certain playstyles. That is why a rework could be important. If the choices are balanced well, elite classes can make hero development feel more meaningful. But if some bonuses are clearly stronger than others, Players might stop experimenting and just follow the same build. Then we have a matchmaking system rework with advanced options and features. For anyone who wants Olden Era to have a serious online scene, this is obviously important. Then we get Observer mode and replays. This could be especially useful for competitive matches. Observer mode should make matches easier to watch, especially in tournaments or community events, while replays give players a way to review close games, learn from mistakes, and relive the most memorable moments. And finally, there is the alternative creature upgrade rebalance. In Olden Era, when you upgrade a creature, you can choose between two different upgrade versions with different stats and abilities. That kind of choice can add a lot to strategy, but only if both upgrades are useful in different ways. If one upgrade is simply stronger in most situations, then players will usually pick that one every time. So a rebalance here could help make alternative upgrades feel more like actual strategic choices, rather than just the obvious best option. So Stage 2 feels like the refinement stage, where Unfrozen takes some of the bigger systems already in the game and tries to make them work better for the long term. Stage 3 is where the roadmap gets really interesting, especially in terms of classic Heroes features and bigger system additions. First, Underground Layer. The Underground is one of those classic Heroes features that can change the entire feeling of a map. It adds exploration, surprise attacks, hidden areas, extra resources, and a sense that the world is bigger than what you see on the surface. Unfrozen mentions special terrain, its own objects, brand new music, and more, which should help the underground feel distinct from the surface. Then we have the Thieves Guild, another classic feature. This gives players more information about enemies and the overall game state. In a strategic game like Heroes, information is power. Knowing who is ahead, who has the strongest army, or who controls the most towns can influence your next move. We are also getting new neutral Tier 8 creatures, meaning Lich Dragons will not be alone anymore. More higher-tier neutral threats can make maps more exciting because they give players more dangerous targets to challenge for powerful rewards. Beyond that, Stage 3 also includes match statistics, new win conditions in PvP, and one especially important progression change: spells will go from level 4 to level 5. We do not know the full details yet, but if done well, this could make magic progression feel pretty exciting in the late game. Then there are map editor improvements. For a Heroes game, a strong map editor can make a big difference. Random maps are great, but handcrafted maps are where you get memorable scenarios, clever pacing, story moments, custom challenges, and the kind of maps people remember years later. And this part became even more interesting recently, because Unfrozen announced that the Mysterious Island, a well-known Heroes 3 PvE map, is coming to Olden Era. We will come back to that later, because it connects directly to the bigger PvE discussion. There is also a major hero specialization rework. That could mean making weaker specializations more useful, improving how they scale over the course of a match, or simply making each hero feel more distinct and worth building around. We also get a very welcome visual change. City models will change on the global map as they are upgraded. That is really a nice touch, because it shows town progression directly on the adventure map. The roadmap also includes Iron Man mode for the campaign. This means players will have to beat the story without regular manual saves, with one save carrying the whole run. Overall, Stage 3 feels like the point where Olden Era starts moving from a solid early access foundation towards something closer to a full Heroes experience. At the same time, this is still the furthest part of the roadmap, so some details are naturally less clear for now. We do not know exactly when each feature will arrive and how they will be prioritized. Then we get to Stage 4, the full release, version 1.0. The biggest single-player item here is Campaign Acts 2 and 3, which means the full release should include a completed campaign story. This stage also includes a PvE roguelike mode, which is probably the most mysterious item on the roadmap. Usually, the appeal of a roguelike mode is that every run feels different, with changing challenges, rewards, and choices along the way. For a hero-style game, that could theoretically mean a separate PvE mode around repeated rounds, different map layouts, changing enemy encounters, random rewards, usual upgrade choices, and trying to survive a sequence of increasingly difficult challenges. So this is a pretty exciting idea on the roadmap, but also one that is hard to judge right now. Then there are alternatives to pick and ban for PvP, map sharing support, more achievements, and more Steam perks. Map sharing could be especially useful if more fans start creating custom maps, because players need an easy way to find, share, and play community-made maps. So, as an early access roadmap, this is a reassuring starting point. It shows that Unfrozen is not only planning bug fixes, but also new systems, more content, and long-term support. But of course, the open question is how much community feedback can still shape the early access plan, and which requests may simply be too big for the roadmap. Now, let's talk about what is not on the roadmap, because this is where a lot of the community discussion is happening. The first major absence is water maps and naval gameplay. There is no mention of boats, sea exploration, naval terrain, islands, shipyards, or water-based map design. For some Heroes fans, that is pretty big omission. Water maps were not always perfectly balanced in the older games, but they added variety, atmosphere, and a sense of adventure. At the same time, naval gameplay is probably not something you just add quickly. It affects map design, movement, AI behavior, adventure objects, and the overall balance of the map. So this will likely come after full release, when the game core is more stable and complete. Second, no new factions are mentioned. This is probably one of the biggest emotional points for the community. New factions are exciting. They are easy to market, easy to understand, and they make the game feel bigger immediately. But adding factions is also a huge amount of work. You need town screens, creatures, heroes, abilities, music, balance, AI behavior, basically everything. So I understand why Unfrozen might avoid promising new factions too early. A new faction is the kind of thing that can define a major update or expansion later. Third, the roadmap seems very focused on multiplayer and PvP. Team play, matchmaking, observer mode, replays, new PvP win conditions, pick and ban alternatives. These are all valuable features. But if you are mostly a single-player fan, you might look at this roadmap and think, okay, but what about me? And this is why the recent announcement about the Mysterious Island is important. Unfrozen announced that this popular Heroes 3 PvE map is coming to Oldenera together with its original creator, Papijama, who has joined the team as a level designer. For PvE players, that is a very good sign. It means handcrafted maps and scenarios are not just something on the side. And Unfrozen already said this will be the first of many PvE additions. So while the roadmap itself looks multiplayer heavy, there are at least signs that single player and PvE content are still part of the bigger plan. Fourth, no mention of war machines. For classic Heroes fans, war machines are part of the identity of the series. Ballista, First Aid Tent, Ammo Cart, these systems create another layer of battlefield strategy. But war machines are also tricky because they touch both combat balance and hero progression. If they are too weak, people ignore them. If they are too strong, they can decide battles by themselves. So this might be another feature that Unfrozen is not ready to promise yet, especially while creature balance, alternative upgrades, and combat systems are still being refined. Fifth, no mention of caravans. Caravans are a quality of life feature some players remember from past Heroes games. They help to reduce tedious army transportation, especially on larger maps with multiple towns and external dwellings. Olden Era does have something in this direction with a remote foothold system, where you can place an army in one foothold building and collect it from another foothold building. So there is already a tool that helps with army movement. But it is not exactly the same as a classic caravan system. And to be fair, classic Heroes chaining has always been part of Heroes gameplay too. Moving armies efficiently, planning routes, and transferring creatures between heroes is part of the skill and strategy of the older games. So maybe Unfrozen wants to keep some of that traditional map movement instead of removing too much of the logistical planning. Then we also have questions about Mac support, Steam Deck support, and co-op campaign. Mac and Steam Deck support would be great to have, but those are probably technical priorities that depend on performance, optimization, and how stable the game is on the main platforms first. Co-op campaign is another interesting one. It sounds exciting, but historically Heroes campaign have mostly been designed as single-player experiences. Multiplayer was mostly about scenarios, hot seat, or custom maps. So when we look at all of these missing points together, I think it is important to remember that just because something is not listed on the current roadmap, that does not automatically mean it will never come to the game. Some of these features may already be planned in some form, while others may simply be too large for the current early access roadmap, and could make more sense after version 1.0, once the core game is more stable and complete. But now, I want to hear from you. Are you happy with the direction of early access so far? And is there anything you were hoping to see on the Olden Era roadmap that was not mentioned? Let me know in the comments what you think. And thank you for watching. It feels good to be back. This is Anna with Heroes Take Turns. Farewell until we meet again.